live on Facebook.
Yeah.
There we go.
Here we go.
We are streamed.
Fun. Hey everyone, Kristen Thomas here. This is a SUPCentric discussion, and we're going to be talking about youth and SUP racing, and we have some awesome people here. But just really quickly, I wanted to introduce myself. I am the former executive director of the Stand-Up Paddle Industry Association. I'm now just a board member, and I also have been SUP racing for a long time. So those two things really inform why I think we need to have a lot of discussions around stand-up paddleboarding. And I think now is just the perfect time to be doing that. We do have virtual racing, but a lot of the races aren't happening. Some people want to avoid paddle ticks. My personality is very gray area. I think any discussion that we're having, any brainstorming is great for our very young sport and to keep it going and to keep it growing. So one of the really important sectors would be youth. And we have a couple of great representatives here of that. So we're kind of going to start with our two high school graduates just last week, right?
Yeah.
Very exciting. Jade Housen and Tyler Basher. I grabbed pictures off of your Facebook and Instagram. I hope you don't mind. Can you guys see?
Oh, that's awesome.
Could you just do a quick introduction of yourself now? How old you are? You both just graduated from high school. How long you've been stand-up paddle racing, and both of you are in the same program here in our area. So just a little bit about yourself to get us started.
Go,
Jade, would you care to go first?
Oh my God. Okay. I'm Jade, as you can see on the slideshow. I'm 17 and I'm from Laguna Beach, California. And Tyler and I paddle with Mike Geisert from the Paddle Academy, who's also on this stream. And I've been seriously racing probably since 2017, and just racing in general, maybe since 2015.
Since you were, when did you start? 13 or 14?
It was like 8 or 9.
Wow. Awesome. Tyler?
Yeah, kind of similar to what Jade said. I've been paddling for about 6 years now, or I guess almost 7. I think I started when I was 11 or 12, and pretty much since I was with Mike. I mean, I remember the first time paddling with Mike, we were going out to just this buoy, maybe a quarter mile offshore, and I was like, no way, I'm not going out there. I was way too scared. But yeah, I've kind of started paddling with Mike and still am today, and it's just been a really cool adventure. It's fun.
Awesome. And then we have 4 different, very different youth paddling programs. Some of you are more focused on the race scene than others. Some of you are year round, some of you are seasonal. So if you could just do quick introductions of the name of your program and where you're located, your name, and kind of what your program does. Mike, you want to get us started since you're 2 of your youth? Just
Sounds good. Mike here. We've been going strong for about 7 years now. Dana Point, California. Our focus is year-round training. Our focus is on race preparation. Our focus is just mentoring and everything that comes with a youth athletic program. We've primarily been focused on kids and families in the community, but we have people that come and train with us from all around the world that are youth that we've gotten to know over the years. So it's been a really cool thing in getting, like Tyler and Jade introduced all these international youth competitors and adults as well that they compete with now. And so our focus, has been for sure on, the program that we have, but as well as, introducing these guys to the lifestyle and the community of paddling, which is the background that I have. I came from a paddling sport background for the last, 30 plus years, starting in canoe, kayak, and working my way up to doing stand-up stuff now. So that's the Paddle Academy.
cool. Thank you so much. Let's kind of go around the country. So we'll go north. That's you, Shelly.
Hi, my name's Shelly Alves, and I started NorCal SUP Prom about 5 years ago, and we are located in Folsom, California, and our whole program is based around youth, getting them out on the water, getting them interested, the water safety, the environmental awareness, and just getting them hooked on being a water sport athlete. We do races. We've done Tohonahu. We put on a 3-day festival in July, although we probably won't do it this year because of COVID, called Paddle Splash. Last year we had 42 paddlers on our team, and this year we have 73 more interested but unable to do it because of COVID. So we're just gathering all the information, hoping for the best for next year. But our program is growing rapidly. We're very fortunate in Northern California to have so many waterways. Between the lakes and the rivers, it's kind of endless as to where we can go. And we try and take these kids out to as many different places as we can to really get them to love the sport and to just do it the rest of their lives.
Fantastic. And Kevin, you're in Wisconsin. Let's go to the Midwest.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm unmuted. Yep. So I'm Kevin Jelka, Madison, Wisconsin. And we have just a young program. This year would be our 4th year. We're kind of playing it by year around here with everything to do with COVID. It's just a small program. I think the only thing kind of worth noting that differentiates it is we created kind of a team approach to things. So I put it under the umbrella of a rental business that has a few locations, and we made teams at each location, and the kids can work as a team and kind of compete against each other. And it's almost like a cross country meet on the water type thing. So we're growing year over year. The kids used to go and glom onto existing events. Some of the Midwest races around here, and race directors were really nice and made youth specific distances and events for us, often put them on for free. But it was hard to get kids kind of trucking around, trying to get them to go to Michigan or anything else. So we kind of created this team system and have dual meets, and that was our way to keep them active and keep them competing.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you created with the dual meets. Fun. Chris, or Goose, as it says right there, Norman, Capital SUP in Annapolis, Maryland. What's your youth program look like?
Hey guys, thank you for hosting this, Kristen. This is awesome to get the kids involved, just because that's the future of our sport. But yeah, we're in Annapolis, Maryland, and we're pretty seasonal. We have pretty harsh winters here with snow, ice, all that good stuff. So we operate pretty much Memorial Day to Labor Day, and Capital SUP is rental based business, but we also have like a good community of people that do local races, regional, and we've traveled out to Oregon to do the Hood River event, and out to PPG and stuff like that. But our kids program is just getting going. We have about 6 kids who are serious about it. Average age I'd say is 12. But really just getting them kind of on the water, getting a little workout, especially with schools getting canceled and stuff like that. They haven't had the opportunity to have a structured workout. So that's kind of been our model, is just get these kids a good workout, have some fun, learn some stuff, and get them out on the water young. And, that'll kind of turn into a lifestyle. I mean, I started out sailing at age 8, and then that kind of transitioned to surfing. And then once paddleboarding kind of became more, involved here in Maryland, it was just another sport to try out. And then the whole racing element was competitive and fun to get going. And I don't know, everybody's got a little competitive spirit in them.
Fun. Well, thank you all for joining today. Again, the idea is just to have a great discussion and get things started. And let's see if there's other people out there. If you're watching this on Facebook and you're interested, please contact us. I really would like to connect people. And I love that these programs might connect, and we might see where we are in terms of things that kind of have been resolved, things that still we don't know about board size or equipment or how things work, that might need some more discussion and work to kind of bring things together and be more cohesive. I am acknowledging this is only North America, but each country and region has its own unique issues, I think. So I think it's a good place to start, but there's want to acknowledge there's some amazing youth programs in other countries around the world too, that hopefully we can get to connect with later. I kind of just put together a list. How do I show the whole screen? These were just things that came to mind. This is not an end all or the only things that we want to talk about. I do definitely want to mention age groups and equipment, but there's lots of other things that fall into. I listened to, Mike was actually on a SIC podcast and they were talking about PE credit. That's something I had never even thought about, but now that I look at high school where you guys just came in, I thought that was a very interesting topic, Tyler and Jade, because you were in a sport that was not a sport that was acknowledged by your high school, and you know, did you get credit for it, and how do you find the time to do something as time consuming? And both of you were also travelers and did the pro thing and are junior champions. Did you, both of you went to different high schools? Did they give you credit for the time that you spent in the paddle academy?
It was actually really cool. I think I started, it's called independent PE when you do a sport outside of high school that acts as PE credit. And paddling was never a thing. Well, actually Shay Foudy did it before me, but it was never like a registered sport for independent PE like most sports are that you can do. So it was a ton of paperwork to get that verified. But once I did it, I didn't have to go through a PE course through, you know, since 7th to 12th grade. And that was really nice to just be able to, you know, skip a class and do workouts at home and, you know, get homework done that otherwise I would do during my training time.
Yeah. And a thank you to all of you too, because you really are, when things are new, you have to do a lot of paperwork. You have to explain, and you'd think people would all know what stand-up paddling is, but they don't. And I think that's a really an important part of what we can do by banding together is to share. Okay, oh, you use paperwork. In our high school, we're trying to do it for the first time. Can you share like how you explained it that worked for them, kind of thing? Jade, did they give you credit? You were also on the surf team, so you were on a high school team too.
So I did independent PE my freshman year and then joined the surf team for my last 3 years of high school. So I didn't get, all of my absences that I took were unexcused. So like if I missed a test or anything, I would just get a 0. But most of my teachers were pretty chill about it. The school has to have certain standards for it to be like a certain merit or something. And it was really hard to travel from my school because they had a certain merit that they wanted to keep. But they just kind of like did it under the table and gave me my work and credit. So
yeah,
it was fun.
But that is one of the things we have to work on. And I know that I've had friends with adults with children at our high school in other sports too, that had a similar, that were pro and like missing a lot, but didn't get credit for it. So that's still something in the US I think we have to work on. Oh, good. And Mike is back. But I thought it was very interesting just that you have to think through things like that when you choose a unique sport like ours. Hi, Mike, welcome back. So we're just talking about PE credit, which was a smaller topic, but one to get into, and how important that is that they're able to spend the time and balance time. For you guys, since we're going to focus a little more on you guys, I know I always found as an athlete in high school, it helped me and I got things out of it, but there were definitely challenges. You just mentioned some of them, like getting unexcused absences when you're out winning the world title. Did you see being in a sport that takes some time? Do you see some positive sides of it now looking back on your high school and even before career?
Well, I just think that traveling really opened my eyes to a lot of different things. Where I live in Laguna, it's very close-knit bubble. Like all the kids who go to my school have been going to the same school together since preschool. So paddling has allowed me to travel and kind of get out of that bubble and open my eyes to the rest of the world. So that's one of the things that I'm super grateful for.
Cool. Tyler, any positives or challenges with it?
I think there's definitely some challenges, just, being a athlete at the level which we're competing at is really difficult. You need to put a lot of time into it. So there's always, like Jade mentioned, making up work and remaking tests or taking zeros when you have to travel. But I mean, it's so hard to match the places that you go with, like the loss of academic work. But, I have missed out on some things, like last year I missed prom and stuff like that. So, I mean, sure, you have to, it's a give and take here and there, but it's definitely been worth it.
Hey, can I add something to that, Kristen?
Yes.
Yeah, so, one of the things that's really cool about youth sports is that kids like Tyler, Jade, Erica, Shay, all these other youth, like paddlers that I know who have, put the time in to go race, overseas or wherever it may be, just locally traveling. Yeah, sure, it puts a crunch on their time, right? But it teaches them time management at a young age, and it teaches them responsibility and the stick-to-itiveness that it takes to succeed in life before they even get to college. So one thing that I found out later on in my life in youth sports, as I got into a rowing career in college, that was like, holy smokes, how am I going to do this? I had no time management skills. I didn't get up at 4:30 in the morning to train. I didn't go to bed on time. I didn't, all those things. And then all of a sudden, you have to take that into consideration. So whether it's a seasonal, program, whether it's, a year-round program like us, these things slowly start to add up. When kids start to learn to have to deal with these things and this adversity and all these things coming at them in other directions, it really helps them out a lot as they age up. And thankfully so, too, is that what you'll learn about, doing youth sports is you meet some really cool parents that are really on top of things and that really teach their kids some amazing things about life like that, and a system to get through those hurdles, a system to go travel and to make sure that they, are staying on top of things. So that's just as important. So, and just to segue into something that I missed out on a little bit is the PE aspect of things, right? So it's super important. These guys kind of stumbled onto it. We all did as we started this program at a young age. So these guys were able to get rankings through WPA, through APP, through all the different systems that are out there, right? These guys were able to get rankings, and it enabled them to go back to their principals, their school principals sometimes, to have to kind of fight for, being able to, train or go to school for one less period, and show them that they're doing these things. So that really helped out a ton. So good. Thanks.
Great. Well, again, Tyler and Jade, you two have been very successful in both the stand-up world and school. So congratulations again on the graduating and, as very good students. So I'm glad that, Mike, you threw in about time management and responsibility. Even if you don't see it now, you have learned a lot and it will set you up well for things. That my phone? No.
Hello.
Yeah, I definitely think learning about time management in paddling has been a major aspect of just life in general. I mean, but before paddling, I was never super motivated or just really had the necessity to have like a very planned out day or anything like that. But once I started getting into training and school started getting more serious, I started to learn with Mike how to plan a day to down to every 5 minutes, all right, you got something to do, got something to be, or have somewhere to be. And it's just very important skills that easily carry on to later in life.
Absolutely. Great, and great to hear that. I'm going to jump into one and we can switch off what we're talking about, or maybe this will just segue into others. But one I'm interested in, because I know I have not been directly involved in youth sports, but I did help every year at an event that both Tyler and Jade participated in when they were younger, called the Junior SUP Fiesta, which there may be others. And Shelly, you just mentioned that you put on one, but this was a youth only event, and it was both SUP racing and SUP surfing, which was very unique, that went on for quite a few years. But I know, again, we are at an early place in stand-up paddling, and we might not all agree to these categories, but I pulled what WPA had, and I pulled Junior SUP Fiesta, and they did have the same age groups. So I'm wondering from your perspective, are these the age groups that you used? Or are these the ideal? They may or may not be. I know often juniors is just under 18. So I think that's probably what you've experienced most of the time. But when we are able to break it down, I'd love your thoughts kind of on these different age groups. Anybody want to start?
Sure, I'll hop in. Yeah, the age groups and the breakdown that you see here from the Junior Sup Fiesta and WPA is great. And there's a lot of reasons why, and that's through the long-term athletic development of youth athletes, okay? There's a huge difference between a 9-year-old girl and an 11-year-old girl, likewise with a boy. And I dove deep into this a while back when I was trying to see how things were going with our age groups, and looked at a lot of studies that were done in the swimming aspect of things. So if you look at how swim meets are set up and how age groups differ in swimming, it's really done for a reason, and it works really well. The more age groups, the more it's broken down, the better. I mean, a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old can't compete against each other. I mean, they can, some do, but it's just, it's hard. And then the tough thing with that is that, race organizers all of a sudden look at the junior event and they go, oh my gosh, if it's a senior race, they're like, there's like 30 different categories now. What do I do? Oh, forget it. Let's just throw them all into 13 and under. Let's just throw them all into 18 and under. And that's usually how it ends up, unfortunately. And just one more quick note is that I think to date still the Junior Sup Fiesta is, I think, still the only standalone SUP event that was ever put on. I know in Southern California for sure, but maybe in the United States, and maybe initially it was probably the only one ever put on. And so hats off to Anthony and those guys for doing that. And I know they put a lot of time into that in getting it done. And that's basically the direction that youth sports and SUP paddling needs to go, is in a junior standalone event only direction.
Standalone events.
Yep.
How about those of you with different programs? I know we've focused a bit on the older, and a lot of you, I think your core are probably the younger ones, right? Maybe 8 to 12, or Kevin, what age groups do you usually see, and how do you break them down?
We have a range from entering 6th grade to entering 12th grade, and we don't divide it up. The first year that I did it, I advertised it for middle school and high school and just divvied it up that way. And I only had 8 middle school boys sign up and 2 high school girls. And everybody still showed up for every practice. Like I said, we just kind of glommed onto existing events. And it was still a ton of fun. But then for year 2, scrapped that, just said entering 6th to entering 12th. And there are huge ability and strength differences in that age range, but we're small, we're growing, and there are exceptions to that. One of our youngest paddlers, his name's Pacey. He's like, I don't know, he's a very, very small kid. And I think I'm trying to think if we had to make an age exception for him to come in. He might have been entering 5th grade. And he would be like 3rd place at some of our races among like 30 kids. So it's kind of fun to see little surprises like that. The other thing that's nice about kind of a young program is parents don't have a ton of expectations for, that their kids aren't going to get like a D1 college scholarship out of this sport around here anyway. And so there's nobody really giving us too hard of a time that their 6th grader is competing against a junior in high school or anything like that. Everybody's just kind of taking the attitude that they're out there to have fun and work together. And that's part of why I really like this team concept. Because you can have a mix of ages all working together for that team score.
I think your points that we're small now. So part of our current size is sometimes a limiting factor. I think it's really important to look at, though, what would the ideal breakdown be? I mean, kids do grow rapidly and this is pretty much, if I remember correctly, I was a swimmer when I was younger. I think this is about those age groups, 2-year spans. I mean, ideally you'd have 1 year, but can you fill that? And I think we do want to have a shout out today to events who have been able to break it down more like this. Some of the big events have done this kind of thing, which was awesome when it can happen. Shelly, how about you? What kind of age groups are you seeing? I mean, what an amazing sign-up list you have of interest.
Well, yeah, it's been interesting. We've been growing rapidly, and this year the interest has been amazing, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that other youth sports aren't going. It's nice. Paddleboarding is a way that we can actually get out there and stay apart and meet all the requirements. But we can't take that many kids on at once. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Our kids are from 8 to 18, and we have quite a bit. We have a big range. Our goal is to make this a high school club sport. Around here in Northern California, people are looking at different sports, not only because of maybe they're tired of the sports and most kids quit at 12 years old and or specialize and don't do anything else. There's a lot of opportunities around here. The mountain bike teams around here in Northern California have gotten huge. I was a part of Capital Crew when it began. I rode for Sac State for 4 years and went all the way to nationals. That program is huge now. So we're modeling this after that. We hope to be in the high schools in the area with a league within the next 2 or 3 years. So that's where we're headed. This breakdown here is wonderful. We didn't have enough kids to race, so our categories went a little bigger. We went 8 to 11 years old, and then we had like 11 to 13. And then we did 13 to 15 and then 15 and up or 16 and up. And we kind of broke it down that way. They all raced at the same time, but they were in their own categories. And, we have some kids that are, they stand out. We got a little kid named Ryder Dalton who just is amazing. He's just a flash. You would never know it, but he can keep up with adults. So that's the cool part about this sport. You start them out young. They love it. It complements almost every other sport that a kid wants to play. It gives them their balance. It gives them their footwork. It gives them their core. It won't mess up their baseball swing. So a lot of people have done it as a way to keep their kid active and maybe use a different set of muscles in their off season. So really enjoying it and just nothing but growth, and super excited about the fact that we're on this with everybody else with the same goals.
Hey, Chris, can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Shelly, one thing that's cool is the guys down in Dana Point here at Dana Point High School started a club in their high school, I think almost 4 years ago now, maybe 5. Tyler and a whole bunch of other kids have come through that Tuesday, Thursday afternoon deal, and they get their PE credits through that. So it was super helpful for them. And they would get out there and actually help assist coaching and stuff like that. And maybe do a little additional workout, but it's totally doable in high school. And then lastly, the age groups that are presented here on this screen from Kristen, I think I've only seen probably 2 or 3 races where that age group was actually filled. The roster of participants actually filled all those groups. And those are at the races where, call them the most popular, whatever you want to say, the PPGs, the BOPs, the Hood River races, and then of course SUP Fiesta. And so those are rare instances, and when you aren't able to fill those age groups, it's totally fine to do so in the way that makes most sense for race organizers. And at the early age, like you guys mentioned, that's pretty much how we've done this for the youth, is basically show up at the race, see who's there, and organize it accordingly.
Great.
Yeah, that's
How about
fantastic.
you, Chris?
So we have a camp that we run in the summer, and that's really just to get the kids an opportunity to get on the boards and get their interest up. And then we start that at age 7, and we'll see a few of those kids from camp come out to our kids race training group. But like I said, our average age is probably that middle school, 10 to 12, 13. And then once they get to that 14 age group, and they've built up their confidence and board skills, we try to get them involved with the adults as soon as we can, just because when they get that competitive and they start getting that speed, they start chasing down the adults, and then it's then we're trying to catch up after them. So like I said, we have a good group of middle school kids, and then we have 2 or 3 high school kids. But like I said, here it's so seasonal. It's tough getting people to commit to that, year-round training when there's other sports going on here. And it is a good break from, lacrosse, which is huge here in Maryland, off-season, hey, let me go do some paddle races, work on my core, work on my balance. And, it's a good complement to some other sports.
Yeah. I think all of you have mentioned one way or another the parents and the family, and the fact that if they're under 18, that's a big part of the whole thing. I think at the very beginning, we saw a lot of the early adopters were the children of parents who are very enthusiastic about stand-up paddling, but it needs to go beyond that. And again, there isn't it's growing all the time, but stand-up paddling 10 years ago was this unknown that had to be explained, like, and what is it? And can I do it? So it's not something that everybody has tried. But it is, it's the bicycle of the water. It is one of the most versatile crafts there are out there. And it is something you can learn to do. Anybody can learn to do. So great. I love the idea of the different kinds of feeder programs and listening to what you're doing there and how you're getting people interested. I think, wow, Shelley, what a interesting point that right now, during COVID times, we're seeing, I just yesterday was on a call with retailers, and most of them have booming businesses. They're running out of stand-up paddle boards, and I understand bikes are the same thing. People have figured out they want to get outside. This is a time to really take advantage of that if we can figure out how. As Shelley has said, she can't manage as many people who are interested. Other youth sports are too close in contact and don't meet the guidelines. But stand-up paddling is naturally socially spread apart by 6 feet, right? Unless you're crashing into each other at the turns. But we have loved watching Mike Eisert's kids. It was hard at first as adults when you guys started getting fast, but now it's part of every year. Which young lady is going to get faster than me this year?
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, and they have such great skills. You've taught them so well, and it's been so fun to see them progress. All part of the very important part of everything that's going on. But the parent factor is an issue. As a child athlete and having fantastic parents just like Jade and Tyler do, I always had some interesting discussions with my parents. My dad always tried to be my coach, even though I had a coach. So sometimes parents are, and this is not specific to SUP, this is a parents and sports kind of issue. So when you have the early ones that a lot of you saw who started a while ago probably had, again, they were the children of people who were paddleboarding, and now you're having kids separately. And as it gets more competitive, Mike, I know you've had a lot of this. And again, you have wonderfully supportive families, but finding that balance, I just remember watching kids burn out because their parents would put so much pressure on them. I mean, we have two young people here who are self-motivated. Does anybody have advice? Or maybe, again, Mike has this very high-powered team, and a lot of you are building and growing. You
know what? I think what Kevin touched on was great. He said that there's no pressure on, some of these kids because, this isn't a D1 sport. And so I always preach the fact that this is a lifestyle first, and that I have older daughters that play club volleyball that went on to college to play, right? And, they're not going to play indoor, volleyball with, 18 other girls every weekend. But this is a sport that you can teach others, their peers. This is a sport that they can introduce to family members, things like that. So that takes the pressure off them. But at the same time, because I've created a program that's more geared towards competitive paddling, at the same time, once I do identify that a kid and the parents are willing to work towards the goal, then I help them establish that goal and stay on track. But in the meantime, I don't create any unexpected, desires or expectations whatsoever for them, and try to let them, which is most important for all youth sports, is let them develop in their own way. Long-term athletic development for kids is key. I mean, these kids, like the 12-year-olds and stuff, when they start, which is like a perfect age, under 12 to start. I mean, you have to let their bodies grow and things like that, And so if they can just through repetition learn the things that are needed, then they're set, But that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Some good points. Anybody else about family and parent? Chris, did you want to? There you go. Unmute.
Yeah, I was gonna just say that the big thing for like our group is like making sure the kids have fun. Like this is just like a fun summertime activity, and like Mike was saying, it's a lifestyle. Being able to spend time on the water is a huge privilege. And here in Annapolis, it's either boating, sailing, or now like paddleboarding. So as long as the kids are having fun, there's not a ton of races around our area, outside of like a few local ones. There's the Carolina Cup, which some parents may drive down to, but some it's just like it's an activity for them to like break up their summer. But as long as they're having fun and just like spending time on the water is kind of like our big goal. You know, again, working with the parents is sometimes difficult. You know, if the kids aren't super interested in it, we just, you know, not pushing them too hard. Like, hey, let's just go out and paddle a few laps, you know, try and beat that person or something like that. But, you know, each kid is kind of motivated in their own ways and at different levels too. You know, like you have the 11-year-old who's like smoking the 13 and 14-year-olds, but I don't know, it's fun and it's awesome that we're diving into all this. I really like who was it talking about the team? Who's that? Kevin
Kevin in Wisconsin. Yes.
Yeah, I want to hear a little more on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really fun idea. I mean, you guys have mentioned the big events that have had that. Shelley, Tahoe Nalu, I think, has a great age group breakdown, and maybe some of the other Tahoe races too, as well as Paddle Splash, your event. But you're right, there aren't that many youth that have the breakdown. So like Mike said, that's a good, I love the idea of high school clubs. I love the idea of team racing, what you're doing, Kevin, between the kids on the different lakes. I think you said there's like 3 main lakes in Madison and you have access to each of them. So you've created kind of a little team at each place and have these, that certainly is a great building block to those who might then get more interested. But back to the parent thing. I mean, parents, when you're under 18 or especially under 16, are absolutely needed for so many reasons. And I think that kind of segues into, driving and getting them there. And so they have to be invested enough to care about it, even if it's just, you know, a summer camp and an activity. But I remember talking my parents into being on the swim team, and I didn't appreciate till as much later that my dad went and sat in a donut shop at 5 a.m. so I could do morning practices before I could drive. You know, there's a lot of commitment that you need out of parents too, and family dynamic and all of those things. But I think cost really fits into that equation too. And youth programs and getting kids started. And do you have the equipment? And I know, I don't know that we need to get into sponsorship too much, but I know that's the way some youth programs have gotten started, is to get a fleet of boards. But some have needed to get that on their own. Or do you get boards for the kids? Do they come and then use your equipment, or do you have an expectation of them having their own? Any thoughts about cost? Is it prohibitive? Is it a problem? Or not so much with what you're doing with kids or how you see youth paddling?
I can speak up to that one, especially for this year. In past years, we've either rented or let kids borrow equipment. With COVID, it's a little bit different because of all the restrictions involved in having that happen. So this particular year, we are asking that everybody has a board already that's their own PFDs. They take care of all their own equipment so that we aren't having to deal with any of that. But in past, we've begged, borrowed, stealed, taken donations to get a fleet of boards, which we will use again next year or whenever COVID restrictions are released. It's never really about cost. The initial part for parents is they don't really look at this sometimes as a sport. And they say, well, we don't know if they're going to like it. I'm like, I've never met anybody who doesn't like paddleboarding, especially a kid. I'm guaranteeing you're going to like this. So that's our big thing, is it's that initial purchase. And it's kind of funny because it's the same way with the mountain bike team. I don't know if my kid's going to like mountain biking. Yes, he's going to love it. Don't buy a crummy mountain bike, buy a decent one. So we try and educate them in that. In past, we've let them use a ton of different boards and try out, you know, your Costco board versus your $500 board on Craigslist versus, you know, and we show them what it means. We go through all the equipment. And the best way to get that going is to educate them and to make them understand. We're working on a program right now where we'll have scholarships for people who can't afford it. And like I said, normally we have equipment that's very cheap rental, but with the COVID restrictions, we're not going to do that this year. The other thing with the parents is we try and get them involved. We ask for water eyes. We ask for them to come out on the water and be eyes on the water. It gives them an opportunity to not only paddle, they don't teach, but they listen and they learn, because they might know how to paddle, but they don't know anything about safety. They don't know how to turn. They don't know anything. And so it benefits the both of them. We also have the parents who don't want to get out on the water, and they go for a hike. All the people go for a hike together while they're there. It's like active. Instead of sitting on like a soccer field and doing nothing, we tell them, hey, go take a hike. We got your kids for an hour. Go do something. And, you know, they want to do that. So it gets it's kind of becomes a family thing. It turned into, for a lot of our families that have been with us, especially since the beginning, everybody in the family paddles now. They all paddle, and everybody's excited to practice. So it's a mindset change that it's a family event. It's something you're going to be doing the rest of your life. You're going to become an ambassador for this sport. And there's nothing but positive things that come out of it. So.
Fantastic. Great points. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, there's definitely a family aspect to go with paddling. I mean, I remember like after practice and stuff, we just like go grab pizza or everything with the team. You just become such a community. I mean, not just yourself, but your family as well. Because I mean, as junior athletes, we do rely on our parents a lot for, I mean, even as far as like, hey mom, can you book me a flight or things like that? Because, you know, when you're underage or, you know, last year, I can't do things like that on my own because, you know, I don't have the authority to, or hey mom, can you drive me to practice before I was 16 and had my driver's license and stuff. So, and you know, your parents meet the parents of other paddlers and things like that. And it just becomes this really like interconnected community and family that's just so cool to be a part of.
Awesome. Have you found, Kevin, cost to be an issue at all for your kids in Madison?
I'm really lucky in the way that we decided to approach it, which was to work under the umbrella of rental businesses. And so the way it came about for us was my friend Stefan Ranke is a manager of one of these locations, and his son Toby, I found out that his Instagram username was something like SUP race kid or something like that. And I was like, what? How did that? And he's like, oh man, he really wants to get into this. And I was like, all right. So I approached the owner of the business and Stefan and just said, hey, can we put this together? I don't have a business. I don't have any of this. Can we just put it under your umbrella? Use your equipment. You guys figure out registration and whatever you need to charge to kind of cover costs of it. And Tyler Leeper, the owner of the business, was really nice. He's doing it basically for under opportunity cost of the rentals and whatever else, just to get kids on the water. So we're really lucky in that way. There's equipment available. There's people that can facilitate kind of that side of things. Mm-hmm. I did buy with some help from the manufacturer. If I'm not trying to plug anybody, but if I'm allowed to give credit to them, sure. I'd like to. Kilo is really nice and got some kids paddles for us with help. I mean, because that was one thing we didn't have, and I didn't want these kids blowing their shoulders out with like 110 square inch paddle. And yeah, we're really lucky in a few ways like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you are welcome to mention brands. I know Mike Riviera was a partner early on, and now SIC has really helped you out. So that certainly has been, partnerships are a big part of it. And of course,
yeah, we've been super fortunate. And one of the things I did identify initially when I decided to start doing this was cost was a factor. And so initially when I did the first kind of aspect of junior training, I got in touch with Brad Rambo and the Rambo family and Mike Muir, who owned Riviera, and they donated the boards and paddles for a season to get a kick started, and I donated all my time. So I always tell this story that between the two of us, we probably invested over $100,000 in time and material to get things going for about a year. And then we realized that after that point in time that just having one manufacturer involved just for one brand wasn't what youth sports is about, obviously. And so anyways, I always was able to and was lucky and fortunate that we had a lot of the stand-up paddling industry here in Orange County, especially the south part of Orange County. So at the races and whatnot, I always connected with people. And so we've had some great assistance from, Infinity over the years, SIC Maui, Starboard in a way has helped out on different occasions with individual athletes and stuff like that. Danny Ching at 4-4 has helped out tremendously with paddles as well as equipment. So we pretty much had everybody in the industry be able to give us assistance in one way or the other. And luckily I was able to, discuss things with these people and emphasize the importance of early entry into a sport with youth and what it does for brands and what it does, for the growth of the sport. And so they saw that as important. And so, we're able to get some assistance in cost initially because the program that I run, we don't provide equipment other than initially, I'll let kids come down and parents come down and try the program for a couple weeks for free or whatever until they're ready to join. And so I always have a few extra boards on tap for kids to use to try. But the cost is huge and the equipment's huge. Like Kevin was saying with the paddles and stuff. The most important thing in teaching kids how to paddle, whether it's recreationally, racing, or surfing, whatever it may be, right, is that you have the right equipment for them. Whether the board fits them, the paddle fits them, and so when we start racing and training, and kids get to a certain level, we have to have the right kind of equipment for them. And I realized that really quickly early on when, back in the day, we were using boards that were 28 inches wide that weighed 45 pounds and paddles that were, as big as a bamboo palm, or palm tree or whatever. And so, the kids would drag the boards to the beach and then the paddles were so big, it was hilarious, and so luckily we got through that phase real quick, but that's kind of how we do things. And it is a commitment, so that's the one thing I do like about it. I think Shelley touched on that maybe. It is a commitment. And so with the program that I run, it's like, hey, you would go spend $500 on an Xbox, or, whatever else that'll entertain your kids. So it's like, if the parents are committed, the kids are committed, I see, and at a young age, it's hard to swallow that. So once again, I always have good used boards that I know that are around and good equipment that I know they can get for a fair price from a manufacturer. So
yeah. Well, let's get really specific about equipment. You've mentioned kind of injury and equipment, which I think it's not the only issue with equipment, but definitely is one of them. So these are children, some below 8 years old, that have started. Jade, you said you started when you were that small. I believe at some point, is there some agreement that racing on smaller than a 12.6 is a good idea? Is it below 11 or below 13 or something like that? Was there at some point, I thought I read an 11-foot board, or was 11 and a half, like a small board? Did you start on something smaller, Jade? You're nodding your head.
I started on a 96404. I think it was called like a monster or something.
Mini monster.
Yeah,
Mini
it was
monster.
bright green.
I remember we did relays with those.
Funny. Oh my god, like everyone had one of those, and that was like the board to have. And I think Montezuma also made like a similar board to that. But honestly, now I think most of the kids will be fine on a 12.6 as long as it's skinny. Like we've had people on 12.6s that are 19, 20 inches wide, and they're fine, and it's super fast for them.
Well, that's so a good point is the volume has changed, the weight has changed. If you're getting a custom board and it can be tiny enough that you can carry it, maybe the length is not as much an issue, but there were quite a few companies at one point. Was it 11 feet, Mike? There was well, yours was 9.6, you said.
Riviera did an 11-foot board. I remember I had one of those.
Yeah, it seemed like everybody kind of landed on that 11-foot mark. And to be honest with you, Kristen, I have no clue why. Just kind of like the 12.6, why everyone landed on that.
12.6, 14, again, we did a lot of arbitrary stuff. It's still a very young sport.
Yep. And I can say this for sure, though, in doing some, some youth classes and stuff associated with homeschooling where, large groups of kids and stuff like that. I don't think there's a single kid that's like, under 10 years old that can carry a stand-up paddleboard to the beach by themselves. So one thing I learned is, working with Oliver, my little guy who's 6 years old, first thing that I tried to figure out is what can this little guy actually manage himself? And smaller boards do help. They teach him the skills and balance that they need. And so, I put him in a swimming pool on a 7-foot inflatable by Isle Surf. And that was his learning point. He, when he mastered that, he went up to an 11-foot board. And then at the ripe age of 6.5, when he mastered that, he hopped on a 20-inch wide 12.6. And once he went fast on that, he realized, okay, I like that one better. But he still likes to go back to the little small ones and play around. So they're more fun.
So how about anybody else? In terms of the racing, there's always the pluses and minuses. And here we have Tyler and Jade who really got into, even though you're juniors and you're junior champions, you were racing against adults. And so there are advantages and disadvantages to board size, what you can handle. Paddles, two of you mentioned that we used to have those Mongo huge paddles with really long shafts, and those definitely weren't good. But there's definitely issues with growth and children growing and what kind of equipment. Have we figured that out in SUP? And so does the board, anything about the board, size, width, weight? and or the blade on a paddle or the shaft? Any of those things that you feel pretty strongly about for kids of a certain age, or to not have injury and to be fair?
I think just having a board that is that just fits the rider well is such an important factor of not causing injury, creating unnecessary resistance or awkward motions or anything like that. If you have a super wide board, you're gonna may have to be in a super awkward position. But I've always been fortunate enough to be on equipment that's been comfortable to be on and things like that. So I can't say super for sure about equipment that is super unfit for someone to be on, or not unfit, but just unfit for that person to be on.
Yeah.
It's also important to start on the right equipment too, because say a kid gets comfortable on a 24-inch wide board for the first time, but it's killing their shoulders, they're not going to have fun paddling because it's just going to hurt them. So it's really important for them to be on something that doesn't hurt them so they can have fun and enjoy the sport.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the other guys and Shelley and stuff use, but for sure the smaller inflatables, there's like some 11-foot and under inflatables, and I'm not talking race shapes or anything like that, but they seem to be way more manageable and really buoyant and stable enough for a small kid. It all is dependent on the level of the program and what you're trying to do, the conditions you're in, and stuff like that. But for sure, a smaller board, way smaller paddle, flexible shafts is better. And the challenging part is, to standardize, sizes and stuff like that for the youth is so hard because the body types are so different, right? And so, the lighter the equipment, unfortunately, sometimes more expensive, but not an inflatable. The lighter the equipment and the smaller the paddle, the more flexible the shaft, the better off you are. And durability, even though it's lighter, is super key with the youth because, as we found out when the kids were younger, we used to pretty much run into any freaking thing that was out there. Each other, we still do. And then
Oh my gosh,
anytime there was a buoy in the way, it got ran over. If there was rocks on the beach, yeah, let's just shove the nose right into the rocks. That works good. Coming in, pretty much could destroy a board in about 2 practices,
I don't know if that's just a youth issue. I'm in an adult training team and, sometimes you lose control. I like having a little, I'm not all about that thin glass. I like a little durability myself.
Yeah. So inflatables are good in that sense.
Interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts about just shape, size, length, board, and other equipment? There are safety, in the US, we're under Coast Guard law. It's under 13. I have to say, as an industry association, racing in many sports has exceptional rules sometimes, and we still haven't done that with the Coast Guard, where depending on your race and your situation, we all want safety. We don't ever want anybody to die on a stand-up paddleboard, and there have been stand-up paddleboard deaths. I'm not talking about racing, but just in the big picture. So this is not an anti-racing, an anti-safety statement, but for instance, under 13, they're supposed to wear a fully buoyant, and for your own, like if I had a rental company, I would for sure use every safety piece of equipment there is. But when you have a well-run race that has a lot of boats and has other safety practices in place, at some point, maybe that equipment, this isn't the group that has to have that particular equipment. But that's, I think, a bigger conversation outside of just youth and just about kind of racing and safety equipment, and when there sometimes might be exceptions to those things. What was another one I wanted? We mentioned quite a few events. Injuries, have you seen in youth? Are there different? Jade, you mentioned shoulders. If something, Tyler, I think I heard you might be injured right now. Is it back?
Yeah, I've actually been dealing with a leg injury for the past 3 or 4 months, but that was just from, I assume it's just from cross training, but I guess that does relate to paddling, just balancing what your body can take and what you think your body can take.
Yeah. Well, and certain muscles while growing, some kids grow super fast and have, issues with muscles and such.
I think I think the training and just, a rec program or camps, I mean, it all goes back to, you can get hurt doing anything, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
if you have them set up, properly and you have the right gear and the proper instruction, that's the fail-safe system. The leash, the PFD, and a great person, giving oversight, I mean, is the cure to all for sure. And everybody here on this panel, I know, does a great job at that. But you do see, people out paddling quite often where I live in Dana Point, at Baby Beach. I sat there one day for fun on the pier after practice and counted over 100 people paddling off the beach in one practice, of which like 60% of them were on Costco boards. And of those 60%, 80% had to paddle backwards, And so you can see that instruction is needed, desperately in a lot of our communities for paddling, And so, not saying that causes injury, but, for us, at the Paddle Academy, it's long duration, athletic development, long-term stuff. And so kids burn out, kids get injured if you push them too soon. None of the kids that we've ever had, have pushed like an adult until they're well beyond puberty and their bodies have developed, and it's not until then that, they, get into the age of like 17 or so or 16 that they start cross training typically, rigorously. And if they have, decided to move up in the ranks to do so. But common injuries in this sport are repetitive motion injuries, joint injuries, shoulders and paddling, lower back in this sport because of poor technique. And I think poor technique leads to most injuries most often. Initially, I think equipment had a little bit to do with it, but, Quick Blade, Werner, Kialoa, all these guys, Hippostick, they all make incredible paddle shaft and paddle configurations now to use accordingly based on your ability, your strength, your height, your weight, all that stuff, So I think it's come a long ways, still can go a lot further, but now I think, with training like I do, it comes into, it comes to fruition once they get older.
Yeah.
Something else that can help is a lot of youth nowadays spend a lot of time forward, screen time, looking down, hunched shoulders. One of the things that we work on is posture, bringing them back, getting their flexibility, and reminding them about that. Often this is a pulling type sport, which is something they're not used to doing. They're into throwing or batting, and they may be off filter from a previous sport. So we really work on their balance and getting those shoulder blades back again. Sometimes we just lay on the board, look up at the sky and let their arms hang down so that they get that motion of opening up their chest. And those are all things you can do to help them and remind them to do often that will help them with the injuries. So my background's in strength coaching, so I try and make sure that we keep that balance in the muscle system, especially as they're progressing and growing.
Awesome. Well, I've kept you a whole hour and I could keep talking, but we should let you go. But any last thoughts? I just want to say thank you to all of you because what you're doing is amazing. It's something I think we all agree that the youth are our future. We want to grow this. We have these lovely young people who have grown up in this sport and are great examples of humans as well as great stand-up paddleboarders. And we hope you will keep going and best of luck in your next adventure. COVID college, whatever that looks like. It'll be interesting. I think you're going to be online, Tyler, and Jade, you're going to Hawaii, where I think they're going to have classes, I think, but all waiting to see. But if there's people listening who are interested in youth sports in any way, I'd love to try to tie the community together. I don't know exactly what that looks like. This was a little bit of an experiment, but let's keep the conversation going. I do, my theory sort of in parenting and life is that having some structure and guidelines is good. It allows you to be creative within that. So that doesn't mean, we're going to be so rigid that things don't work, but it was fun to talk about some of those things that we might do going forward. Everything that you're doing on the spectrum is super important. From those Costco, we want those Costco people that you mentioned, Mike, they need to have a good experience. So they want to bring their family into it. So having the right equipment, doing these things to making sure it's fun, making sure it's done safely and well builds into what Tyler and Jade have become, which are world-class athletes. So let's keep it going. Anything else? Thank you again for being here today. Mike, Shelley, Tyler, Kevin, Jade, and Chris.
Thank you for having us. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. If anybody who wants to collaborate or has any questions, Kristen has my email, phone number. Get in touch.
Cool. Yes, Kristen, thank you so much for doing this. This is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Would love to do more with you guys and just hearing from the kid athletes. That's where my program is headed. So I'm just beyond thrilled about this. Thanks again.
Great.
All right.
Let's keep it going. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kristen.